how in the world did they hire that dude? Um,
Oh,
like
yeah.
the church hiring staffing process is so unbelievably challenging.
On this series of the Seats to Streets podcast, we tackle something that every church has to deal with. That's hiring ministry staff and filling open positions. And this series called Hiring Ministry Staff Made Easy, we want to look at a few things. We want to look at the current way we're doing it. Maybe it's a little broken. We also want to look at a cultural fit of the church, and then something new, maybe you've never heard of, that we call a yellow flag interview, that we'd like to give you those tools. So glad that you're here with us to be able to experience what this series is about. But first, before we go, I want to tell you about our sponsor for the Seats to Streets podcast. That's Pioneer Bible Translators. With prayer as their strategy, PBT wants to see transformed lives through God's word in every language, including deaf. Our deaf brothers and sisters. Be sure to go over to pioneerbible.org and check them out. But for now, enjoy this series. What's up? Welcome back to this episode of the Seats to Streets podcast. My name is JR. That guy's Brian. We have these cool name markers. If you're watching us on YouTube, really just to remind us of our names. Because sometimes we get into a point where it's like, what's my name again? I just got yelled at by a 3-year-old that's bossing me around. I don't even know who I am anymore. So those name markers are for us. And if you're listening on audio and you're like, what in the world are they saying about YouTube and video? And you see, it's because Spotify and YouTube, we publish a video podcast. And then all the other places where don't take video, we rip the audio and send that for your listening pleasure through your earbuds. So man, Brian, speaking of earbuds, this is the second pair that I've now got to go take back in to have them replaced because they're buzzing constantly. Like right now, I'm getting very upset. Can't we get some quality stuff? You have to pay all that much money for it? My goodness.
I opened up my AirPod case the other day, and the AirPods weren't in there. I have no idea where they are.
What?
Like I carry it with me all the time, taking out, put it in. I have no idea. Lost them. So, this is sad, but this is true. This is why I own 2 sets of AirPods. One pair that stays in my vehicle all the time so that when I'm driving, I can talk, and
True.
One pair that stays with me all the time. And it was the pair that I had with me. I had been using them. I set them down in the seat next to me just to set them down real quick. And my daughter gets in, and I have just threw everything off the seat. I have no idea where it is, but I know that they're not where they're supposed to be. So
I get it.
That problem out.
Now you said you had 2 pair. Is that including what you have in your ear? Because that's not white.
No, this is the pair I use just for down here at my computer here. So there.
Yeah, is patheticad a word?
It is.
I need 3 sets of AirPods to function.
Well, these aren't AirPods. These are different. I bought these actually to work out with because these go over the back of the ear and they're like kind of waterproof. So I bought these for that purpose because they really work in very tightly. And then and then I went a different route. So I keep these here for this purpose, for the online meetings and
That's
for
cute.
all the Zoom
That's
calls
nice.
and those things.
I'm
Hey,
glad you could
there's a
justify all
system
that.
for everything, man. And this is my
Right.
system.
This is my system because I need 3 pairs. So when I toss a pair out, I've got 2 backups. Then I only need to replace one. I'm just so frustrated. Like I know I've replaced the case 2 or 3 times because it won't wireless charge, which that's not a huge deal. I got a cord here at the desk. I just plug it in. It's not a big deal to me. But the buzzing just drives me nuts. Like, why in the world can we not figure this out and to actually create a sustainable replacement? I don't get it. So,
all right. So as the unplanned transition point from that, talk about things that drive you nuts and are unsustainable.
Here we go. There's the chit chat and the small talk and the rapport.
Preacher transitions there.
No, you need to have it alliterated in order for that to be a preacher transition.
I can't. I'm not really good at that. Yeah. So, but in one of the things that I know that you and I talk about a lot are like, how in the world did they hire that dude? Like the church hiring staffing process is so unbelievably challenging. I just know from personal, I was having this conversation with someone here recently that if I look at some of the biggest errors I've made in just my time in ministry, that's 3 out of the top 5 were staffing mistakes.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%.
mistake hiring and firing mistakes.
The
And
the
usually if
fact
you
that
hire well, you don't have to deal with the fire as much.
well, the fact that we still struggle with an average tenure of a youth minister of under 3 years at a church is not is that not a glaring spotlight on the fact that, man, we're just not hiring right.
And I
There's a
can't
process breakdown.
validate this statement. I was told this statement just yesterday. I was told the statement. I don't know if it's true. The statement was that the average tenure of ministry, like before someone leaves the ministry,
Oh,
period, is 7 years.
yeah, that's probably dropping now
Now,
because of COVID.
now I
But
know what there isn't out there yet that would be nice and maybe something for us to be thinking about in the future is how do you help ministers interview churches better? Right? How do you help ministers go through the process of, dude, you don't want to go there and be able to weed those out? But
mhm,
one of the big components first is like churches can love their ministers and their staff well by being more particular
yeah,
and designed and intentional in their hiring process so they can avoid so many of the pitfalls of the hiring and the onboarding processes to staff that are not going to be there long because you've got the wrong person to begin with.
right. Yeah, uh, I'm 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 baffled that we still don't have a better way of doing this. So, which is why we are embarking on this series. It's called "Hiring Ministry Staff Made Easy." Now, I know that's a bit pretentious and a
Made
bit
easy.
a bit cocky, but I do believe that we've done this enough now that we have some data and we have some methodology that would greatly benefit churches, and we want to give it to you. Like, that's the point.
Yes.
So today, Brian, I just want to kind of point out the places we've seen where we've done it wrong before and churches have done it wrong, and just to be able to understand how big the problem is. So
Yeah.
one of the things I'm seeing right now is the days of posting your job description to your local Christian college, their ministry openings page, and they're under their alumni tab. Man, the days of doing that are leaving fast, if not gone.
Yeah.
Just not uh, cranking out the response that we've been used to, because you've seen it before. I mean, you and I've worked together where I've seen the resumes on your desk of 20, 30 applicants for a specific role in the church, and actually, knowing that that's only like 2 3 3 weeks of applications and there's still more coming in. Man, the
Mhm.
days of posting it to a Christian college website, one Christian college website or two or three, and getting 30 to 40 applications, man, they're toast. They're done.
No.
It's just
Yeah.
not going to be there.
So, and that's one of the things that we'll help you with in the next few weeks is like there is a better way. There's a more effective way to be able to get higher quality names and more names. And that
Right.
doesn't mean that's the only way you're going to get it, man. We've hired people through some really strange outlets before, but
Hmm.
no, I think that one is definitely uh, it, it lowers your capacity to get quality candidates
Yep.
because what you're only looking for candidates that are looking, intentionally looking, and
Hmm.
not that that's bad, um, but there are alternative options that can get you candidates who may be open but not intentionally looking.
Exactly. I would agree.
And so, yeah, well, that I think one of them that you see oftentimes in the process is what you're always trying to find is, and this came from multiple different leadership books and management books and people books, is you're always looking for the right person in the right seat, right?
Right.
That's the end of the day when you're going through a hiring process. You're trying to find the right person for your organization and finding a way to put them in the right seat, the right
Yep.
place in your organization. But that first question is right person. And a friend of mine used to always call it the parking lot test. And that's when you drive into the parking lot and you see that
Hmm.
one person's car there. Do you go, oh, like just to see their car, is it a point of stress or a point of contention? Right. So it's important to start from the very beginning to go, How do we not have that happen? Like, do I like talking to the person that I'm going to be hiring? Because if I don't like talking to them, there's no way my congregation is going to like talking to them. And so that one is a really key factor for me for most positions. There's a handful where it may not be as essential, but throughout the whole process, when you think about the right person, that parking lot test is important to
Yeah.
keep in your mind. Like, how do I make sure that I just flat enjoy talking to them? And again, we've got a way to be able to help you find that out very quickly and to
Yep.
be able to make that decision very quickly. Yeah.
Yep.
So
We
that's a one that I see.
I'm helping a church right now. They're hiring a student ministry position and a children's ministry position, and this process of hiring ministry staff made easy, walking through them, beta testing something that we can put out for other churches. And I ask a similar question. Instead of a parking lot test, I try to, by that time I've gotten to know the church. I've gotten to know the individuals that are either on a search team, or the lead minister, who might be the one who is the only search team. It's just me and him doing this. There's a church I'm working with right now. He loves to go hunting, and
Hmm.
I told him, I said, look, here's the goal. We're going to start out with the first interactions, the first interviews, the first thoughts, as we approach this candidate. Is the first question you have to answer is after I have sat in a deer blind for 2 hours with them, would I be excited to go do that again?
Yeah.
Or here in Louisville, right? We've got the Louisville Cardinals that are in the college basketball program. Which, by the way, this year they've won 4 games. They ended it with 4 games. 4 games. So the
Hmm.
question I would look for a local Louisville church would say, hey, would you enjoy going to a Louisville basketball game with them? And would you enjoy
Yeah.
going to a second? If the answer is yes, I look forward to seeing their car so I can go in and see them, or I would look forward to a second game. We're already off to the races, and so many problems can be avoided if we actually approached it that way, instead of the same ways we've been doing it before, which is what curriculum are you going to use? What how would you handle a disgruntled parent, and how would we do this? All of those are necessary, Brian. Obviously, we've got to be able
Yes.
to
Right.
walk through those, but it's not the first step.
Right. Um, so when you talk about that, something to keep in mind, and I know this is there's a lot more to evaluate. You got to go back to those kind of the 5 questions a healthy church should be able to answer. But being able to know who are the people that you're well designed to reach, who are the people you're trying to reach, that sort of target audience mindset really plays into it. I'm often thinking about some of the people that I spend time with, and I think, can this person just handle being around them? This tomorrow, I'm going to be the in cage announcer for local MMA fights.
Sweet.
And in this corner, and I get to be that guy, right? And so what I think about with my hires, if I brought those people to that fight with me, they
Right.
may not be into watching that, right? I get it. They may not be into watching that, but are they going to be offended by the people that I'm spending my time around? Are they going to be troubled by the people I'm spending time? Can they handle caring for the people that I'm engaging with in that environment? And if they're just not going to be able to function there, that means I'm going to have to keep them separate from,
Right.
and that's not a healthy model. And
Nope.
so if I want a healthy church, I've got to find the person who I know can care for the people that we are caring for. And so
Yep.
that target audience is a key component to be asking yourself. And my hope is, as we've mentioned some of these, that you're sitting there and going, wait a minute, that's why that person didn't work.
Missed that. Yep. That's what
Yeah.
didn't work out. Yeah.
So I think the
You know what?
target audience is a key one.
It is, because I was just reading today, and I don't. I was reading today, Tony. I was like going through some back older emails from the Unstuck group Tony Morgan sends out, and it was an email about the 4 things your church doesn't really need. And
Mm.
one of them was, it doesn't need a mission statement, but your church needs a mission field. I would argue
Okay.
you need both.
Yeah.
I get the
You
missions.
need an identity. That
You're
matters.
this is our mission. This is the paint. Whenever I look at a church, and I always tell them, I was like, Bob Ross was fantastic, because he could take what was in his head, and he could paint it in such a way that you felt like you could do the same. I said a mission statement is exactly that. You're trying to paint a picture where the people, when they read that mission statement, go, I see myself in there. Like I see
Yeah.
myself in the woods next to that
Right.
happy little tree.
Right.
Which by the way, my the student ministry at our church, they had a painting with Bob Ross night as a just a relational networking thing, and it was
Fun.
hilarious. It was Eli goes to it. You know what he comes home with? A
Oh,
a picture of SpongeBob.
nearly the same thing.
Because
Nearly the same thing.
he gets into it and realizes I cannot do this. So
There would
it's
be no
this
happy tree.
it's this like thing of just, so he's got a SpongeBob picture in his room now. It's hilarious. But
But with
the
that,
mission
though,
field is
like,
key. If you know
right.
it, right? If you knew where you're going, you can hire those people to be able to help you get there. I agree with you.
Yeah. And the issue, like, you don't need do you need a mission statement? Not if it's just a statement.
If it's
If
just
it's an identity of who you are and it
Yeah.
clarifies who you are and what you do and how, absolutely, you need that information. You may not need the statement, although the statement makes it easier to bring others on board with it. But we all know those churches that have good statements, but it's
Yeah.
not really who they are. And so sometimes defining that mission field really helps with that. And that's just a matter of knowing when you're hiring someone, again, right person, right seat, you're
Right.
trying to determine, are they going to be a good cultural fit? I recently
Right.
worked with a church and talking with them, their senior minister was passionate about taking people who were kind of out of the Bible Belt, who had been sort of born and raised in Christendom,
Yeah.
and they had all the language and all the speak, but they'd never learned, like his phrase was, like they never learned how to be on mission, right?
Mhm.
So he had this passion for sort of taking lukewarm Christians and kind of reigniting them. His youth guy had a passion for reaching completely like separate from the church, distant, no church,
Right.
lower income people, that like passionate about, and was great at it. And it wasn't until we were able to say, go, okay, I want you to see this and I want you to see this. You're having a conflict here.
That's
Like you don't even know that the conflict exists yet, but you'll notice that like you're almost creating two churches. And so knowing that cultural fit is really, really key, knowing that target. So you got to have that. I would suggest another one is more so today than at any other time in church history. The theology of your church matters.
Mm.
And I say that because it used to be, if you were born Methodist, you went to the Methodist church. If you were born Presbyterian, you went to the Presbyterian church. But now, so many of these churches that don't use any sort of title in their name, they are connected to something, but they don't really talk about it. And the average person attending rarely knows or cares what the cultural or theological or doctrinal background of that church is. But for the health of your organization, you better know that for your staff. You need some closed-fisted topics that we're going to hold on to this, right? And you need some open palm topics that we're not going to fight about it, but we do stand here in this component. And most of what I've seen in church hiring either avoids the theology issues or they go about it in a very unhealthy way that actually puts pressure on the wrong person.
Right.
The pressure for the theology is on the church, not the candidate. And
Right.
so we want to talk with you as we go through this about how to put that pressure on the church, not the candidate, so that you don't end up in a situation where the candidate will say what needs to be said in order to get the job, but actually doesn't align with it. There's some ways that we can help with that. But I think, all of us at one point or another have seen someone come into a church and your church had a particular stance on a particular point. Maybe it's a big theological, biblical issue. Maybe it's a big theological, social issue. And you find out this person comes in and they stand in a completely different place from you. That's going to create a conflict that will create a rift within the congregation that will be unhealthy. So being able to work those things out in advance, really, really key. Having some good documents that say, this is what we believe and teach. This is exactly what it is. And really spending the time, this is a leadership issue, but in our leadership, about every 2 to 3 years, we go back and look at that document again and go, do we still say this? Is this still accurate for us? All of those things matter, but it really matters in the interview process.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually, just before we got on here to record, I was sitting in, kind of as a handoff, or just a proctor for a conversation with a church that we're in process right now, helping to hire a student minister position on the subject of salvation and baptism, and how does that play in? I mean, and all of it. And I told him, I said, hey, this is not a conversation where I'm expecting you as the candidate to come in and defend what your belief are. And that we're not doing that. I said, if anything, it's the church. The church is here just to say, hey, I want you to be able to hear where we're coming from. I want you to be able to have the information, the knowledge of where we've come to this, so that you can look and to see, does this align with you? I told him, I said, we're not asking for you to clarify. We're not asking for you to say you align. We're not asking for you to agree or disagree or anything. We just want to have you to have the opportunity just to sit and to listen and to really get to know that part of the church, because I told him, I said, I believe there's a bit of an alignment issue. And it was great. It was a fantastic time. It actually went over time. So I excused myself just so I can record and let them continue the conversation. But
but that is the key, to be able to have those conversations, because in fact, I just had a conversation with my elders 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about a pretty big topic when it comes to just lifestyle choices and things like that. And I'm like, here is what I believe about this topic.
Yep.
And I said, the problem is, who cares what I believe? We need to know what we believe.
Yeah.
So each of you individually need to figure out where you stand on this topic, so that we can decide what areas we will cling to and what areas we'll kind of be a little more loose and relaxed in. But we try to make that a process within our leadership about once a quarter, to kind of pick a bigger topic and go, we're going to really dive into this bigger topic. But that way it makes it a lot easier when we bring other people in to be able to go, hey, here's where we stand on this. Here's the areas that we're open palmed on. Here's where areas we're closed fisted. There's a lot of these that are just going to be choices, but man, does it make it more helpful for everybody involved.
And you're confident in it because you've just spent the time to go and study that again. So here, I think
as a minister, I don't have to worry about saying, like, I know when I say something, I know where they stand on it too.
Exactly.
And I don't say something in front of the church and then go, oh, you guys don't believe that? Dude,
wait a minute, we should have thought through that. So here's one thing the topic I want to end on. Is the topic of search committees. I've seen it in so many ways. I've been on several. I've coached several, and I've also been asked to, hey, we're good. We don't need any coaching on this part. But once we come back, help us do this. And I'm like, oh, brother. So one of the things that I see as a trend that I really believe it's adding to the problem. Is it's when you talk about right people, right seat. You want to make sure they get them on the bus, on the right seat on the bus. Same thing when it comes to search committees, search teams, hiring committee, whatever you want to call them. We tend to put the wrong people in the room and the wrong amount of people in the room. I watched the church one time. It was 10 or 12 people on this search committee. Brian, it was to the point where those 10 or 12 people ended up being, I think that was 15 to 20% of the church's average attendance was made up of individuals on this search committee. And if I understand it correctly, the rule was we all are in agreement that if we have someone who's a no, that candidate slides out. We go on to the next one. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time being in the car leaving church on a Sunday morning and getting the 4 other people in the car to agree where we should go eat lunch, let alone hiring a potential or any staff member. So I think, man, I really do think one of the things that we have got to address lovingly is the fact that we are overcrowding the room for the people that need or that should be in there to be a part of this search and hiring process.
If you need that many people in the room, then that means somewhere you have not provided clarity prior to. Because if there's clarity, you don't need all the people in the room because those other people have already been in the room because they provided the clarity, right? You don't need every elder, for example, because the elders have already said this is where we stand on this theology point. You don't need every board member because the board has already said these are the policies that we
Yep.
abide by. You don't need every staff person. I'm telling you, sometimes you don't need lead minister, right? There are a lot of those times, a lot of people, a lot of staff that we hire, I don't get involved until a little bit later in the equation because it's not as important for the role that we're in that environment. But there is a sign of a lack of health if you think you need all of those people in that meeting and you're creating immediately a place for unnecessary conflict.
Yep.
That's really, really key. And part of it, the challenge of hiring, right? Let's be honest about this for a second. Let's play around in some reality here. The smaller your church and the less money you have to offer, the lower your candidate pool is going to be, right? That doesn't mean that God doesn't have somebody out there who's a great fit for you, right? That absolutely may be. It might be that your church brings in someone who doesn't have the background and experience, but they have the heart, and your church can help train them up in. I was talking to a minister yesterday, and I really appreciated this compliment personally. He'd said, Brian, it's amazing to see how many ministers and just people and leaders that you personally mentor into their role.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many guys come out of school, come out of college, come into a role, and they're just told, here you go, that's yours, make that happen. And there's not someone to sort of guide them through and coach them through, hey, you're so close here, careful on this, maybe consider more of that, and being able to
Yep.
play a part in that coaching and development of a person. And I would argue that's true regardless of the role they have in your church. Now, this was not part of my original plan, and I will tell you that. This was actually something my elders asked me to do. But they asked me to start taking on, I have an executive who does the professional one-on-ones with my staff. But the elders asked me to take on a one-on-one. They asked for once a month. I do it twice a month with everyone on my staff, with the exception of the janitor. With the exception of the janitor. And it's for coaching and for prayer. Like, I'm just, what are you going on in your life? How do I pray for you? How does that impact in what you're doing here? It's not for their professional development. It's not for their, hey, did you get your goals? That's somebody else's thing. It's about them as a person. But that coaching, that mentoring, all of those components are so key when you recognize that the smaller your church is, the less money you have, the lower quality candidates you will automatically get in. That's fine. That you just have to recognize that component and figure out where you're at. Yep. Within that, it's figuring out, like that search committee. These are things that need to be worked out, right? A while back, we looked to hire someone who was really like, we're meeting with them. It's going great. I really like this guy. And it dawned on us as we were working through that, he's going to be outstanding with about 3 years of mentoring and help. Mm-hmm. He didn't have the experience, but in 3 years, this guy is going to be killing it.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular role, I didn't have 3 years. So we had to pass on him because I'm like, I don't have the 3 years to pour into him to what he need. Other people, I'm able to sit and go, dude, this dude can hit the ground running. He can keep things rolling, and we can mentor these other components in him over time. Right. But this candidate, I didn't have that ability. But if the team understands that you're hiring in part for potential, and sometimes you can hire for the long term, and sometimes you can hire for the short term, and all of that, man, all that conversation need to happen well before you make your first plea for looking for candidates. Exactly. And I think we can help you with that as we walk through some steps and where they fit.
Yeah. We hope that just hearing some of our conversation and hearing some of our experience that you've been pricked to go, oh, that's it. That's something that I've been missing, or that's something that I need to look into. And we would love to be able to help with that. That's what we do. We want to help you create committed, growing disciple makers in your church. We want you to be able to see them activated and mobilized from Sunday morning seats to the local and global streets. And this is why we do this. This is why we provide a podcast and have these conversations. So coming up in the next few weeks, we're going to walk you through some of the trends we're seeing. We're going to walk you through some of the statistics that we're running into in our own experience with helping churches to be able to develop maybe a healthier way of hiring and onboarding their staff. Because I believe there's some things that we're doing now that are really, really, really good. And there's some things that we're doing now that are really taken away from the greatness that could be taking place when we hire someone. So stick around the next couple of weeks. Would love to be able to do that. Brian did mention that if you've never heard of the 5 questions a healthy church can answer, go back and listen to that. It's a series previous to this where we break down the 5 core statements every church should have that build on what they do next. And being able to have that can help you understand, who do I need to hire and why do we need this type of person? So if you're in the process of hiring or you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can connect with us at seatstostreets.com and be able to connect, hit on the connect tab and to be able to reach out. We would love to be of help in any way we can to you guys. So we hope you're having a great time, and we'll see you next week on the Seats to Streets podcast. Take care, folks.